David here with Figboot on Pens. I always enjoy checking out new pens. I also enjoy taking a look at pen manufacturers that are new to me. And today I have something for you that's both of those things. I have a brand new pen recently released from Jean-Pierre Lepine, and it is called the Yuzu. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of the Lepine Yuzu, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for. I'll show some measurements and then some size comparisons, and also provide a writing sample. This pen was loaned to me by Renzo at Papier Plume. Papier Plume is a fountain pen retailer based out of New Orleans, Louisiana. They have a website as well as a brick and mortar store in the Bourbon District area of New Orleans. Now, I've been down to New Orleans on a couple of occasions, but it was before I became interested in fountain pens, and so I look forward to getting down there again and checking out the Papier Plume retail location. One of the last times I was down in New Orleans, I got to visit something interesting. One of my favorite books is A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole, which takes place in New Orleans. The opening scene of the book takes place outside of a department store on Canal Street, right around the corner from Bourbon Street. The protagonist of the book, Ignatius Riley, is waiting for the bus, all while studying the crowds of people for signs of bad taste in dress. There's a statue of Ignatius that I had to visit. I looked at a map, and I believe the last time I was there, I walked right past Papier Plume. But like I said, it was before I got into this hobby, and so I really didn't know what I was missing. So today, the pen I have, like I said, is from Jean-Pierre Lepine. Now, I was familiar with some of his pens. His pens are typically not very subtle. He has one made from the parts of the Titanic, and many of his pens push design and functionality to the extreme. It's worth checking out the Papier Plume site just to check out some of the Lepine designs. He creates the extreme, and then there's pens which could be considered a little bit more traditional. And the pen that we'll look at today is, though it's extremely tame compared to some of his other designs, I think it still has a great deal of artistic flair. The Yuzu actually arrives in this interesting wood box. Most wood boxes for fountain pens are that light, soft wood, but this is real solid wood. It's thick and it's nice. The lid is actually engraved with Lepine, and then it says Atelier, which is French for workshop. The lid slides open, and then inside we have a wood tray with the pen. This tray actually lifts out, and it lifts out and can be used as a desk tray, which is nice. It's nice and solid. And then underneath there's a couple of ink cartridges. And then here is the pen, the Jean-Pierre Lepine Yuzu. This particular model is made from black acrylic polymer, and the accents are palladium and have a brushed finish. The body of this pen feels very similar to the Macrolon of the Lamy 2000. This pen is also available in two types of wood. There's a Cocobolo model, as well as one made out of a black ebony wood. So let's start by taking a look at the finial. The end of the cap is angled, as well as slightly rounded. And I like this look. Having it a bit rounded and the angle slightly inconsistent really give it more of a feeling of flow rather than just having the end of the cap chopped off at a sharp angle. Then we have the clip, which is brushed palladium, and it's a bit on the thick side, but still very functional. It starts off just a little bit wider and tapers down just slightly. The top of the clip is angled down and to the left if it's facing you, and then the bottom of the clip is angled the opposite way, down and to the right. The cap angles up and then becomes flat at about this point. Then it transitions to the Palladium Cap Band, which is angled as well. It is kind of cool. The back of the band is a little thin, and then the thicker portion is in the front. And the front is engraved with Lepine and then Atelier, which is actually slightly off-center in relation to the clip. While on other pens, that's the fact that the engraving is off-center would bother me, but I feel that the Yuzu can get away with it. This pen feels like a piece of design art, so I feel it can be given some artistic license. There is an angled step down to the end of the barrel, and then it slopes down at an even angle, and then at the end of the barrel we have an angle which is like the finial, both angled as well as rounded. The cap twists off. Now, in order to uncap this pen, it actually requires 3 3/4 turns of the cap, which is a lot. But once it's off, it reveals this very nice medium steel nib, which has a very nice matte finish. The nib is stamped with a pretty cool floral design. Then it says Jean-Pierre Lepine and Paris. I don't believe this nib has any markings indicating that it is a medium, but I believe this pen is only available with a medium steel nib. And then here's a look at the plastic feed. You'll see in the writing sample, but I do find this steel nib to be very pleasant. It's firm without feeling like a nail, and has a small amount of feedback without having the drag of an unsharpened pencil. The end of the section has a brushed palladium piece which mirrors the angle of the cap band, which is nice. And then the section itself is basically straight and then made of the same material as the cap and the barrel. It transitions into the cap threads, which I don't find to be sharp, and it's set back a little far so they don't get in my way when I'm using this pen. That I'm typically not a fan of straight sections, but this one works and is comfortable. The acrylic polymer material isn't slick and provides a decent grip. The pen is plenty long enough to use unposted, which is a good thing, because the cap does post, but it posts rather shallow by design, and while it can barely be posted, it's not recommended. Did I wish it would post securely or fully? Yes, but like I said, it's by design, not by any type of manufacturing design or flaw. This is something I thought was interesting. Behind the threads is another feature of this pen, which is another band. And on it, it says, and please forgive my French pronunciations, it says Fabrique de notre atelier du Jura, France, which translates to Made in Our Workshop in Jura, France. This is a cartridge converter pen. 2 cartridges are included with this pen, but it does not include a converter. This was one that I added to it. It accepts a standard international converter, so chances are you have one of those lying around. This is a pen that retails on Papier Plume for $210. And then the Coco Bolo and the Ebony Wood models retail for $299. At that price point, would I expect a converter to be included? Yes. And at around this price point, folks start anticipating a gold nib rather than a steel nib, but I don't feel that either of those omissions are fatal flaws with this pen. The steel nib performs very well, and it doesn't leave me remiss that it's not gold. The pen is very well constructed with a high amount of precision using very high quality materials. I mean, I scoured this pen looking for little flaws, and I pretty much came up dry. Even along these transitions between the acrylic polymer and the metal, those could be problematic transitions at times, but everything looked perfect on this Yuzu. I've grown fond of this pen in the time that I've had it. I like the looks. There is an artistic flair to the style of this pen. The artistic elements flow nicely, that they don't seem disjointed or forced. And I kind of like that the angles in the elements alternate. It goes this way and then this way and then this way and then this way and this way. It kind of alternates as you make your way down the pen. So, if you're looking for something a little out of the ordinary from a manufacturer that's a little lesser known, the Jean-Pierre Lepine Yuzu is worth checking out. Thanks again. Go out to Renzo at Papier Plume. There is a link below to this pen on their site. You should also check out the ink section of their site. Papier Plume has some very interesting house-branded inks, one of which I'll show you during the writing sample. You might have noticed that I had some new intro music, as well as you'll notice a new piece of music for the upcoming writing sample. These are original compositions of a gentleman by the name of Dan Pancaldi. He's a viewer who is also a classical musician that enjoys composing music. He had offered to create something for my channel, and I took him up on his generous offer. We went back and forth for a while, working on a few angles, and ended up with what you hear. Something that's inspired by like the 60s California surf music. If you'd care to learn more about Dan's music, a link to his site is in the notes below. So now it's time for some measurements, size comparisons, and the aforementioned writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Jean-Pierre Lepine Yuzu. Here it is with a Lamy 2000. Like I said, the material kind of feels the same, just a little bit, or in the same family. And then here it is with an Edison Herald. And then here it is with a Parker Dual Fold Centennial Big Red. Then in regard to some other pens, here it is with a Sailor 1911 Large. Then here it is with a Pilot Custom 823. And then here it is with a Pelican M805. So here we go with the writing sample for the Jean-Pierre Lepine Yuzu. This is a medium steel nib, and the ink that I'm using today is Papier Plume Ivy Green. This is what the ink looks like. It's kind of a lighter green. It isn't necessarily one that I would describe as heavy. Here it is in comparison to a Roaring Klingner Verdura. And then here it is with the Mont Blanc Irish green, which is one of my favorite greens. So it's just a little bit lighter than that. This is what the bottle looks like. Like I said, you should check out the Papier Plume ink section. They have a number of different house brands of ink within actually a variety of bottles as well. Some of them look kind of cool that have some of the wax seals on the top and everything. Okay, so let's get on with the rest of the writing sample. Like I said, that this is a medium steel nib, and it is a bit on the firm side, but I would not categorize it as writing with a nail, that it's still very pleasant to use. There is a little bit of feedback. You're not going to get too much line variation out of here, and the ink flow I have found to be fairly decent on this as well. In regard to reverse writing, it's a little bit on the scratchy side, but in regard to some fast writing, I find that there's no issues whatsoever. And I kind of find that this writes on the kind of on the fine side of medium, which is nice. For me, I kind of like big, thick, medium lines, and so having something along these lines is a nice alternative. So there we have the Jean-Pierre Lepine Yuzu, which is a very interesting pen from a brand that I was somewhat familiar with, but hadn't had the opportunity to check out one of their pens. So it's something that I was very interested in, and something that I was very pleased with the performance. So thanks again go out to Papier Plume for the loan of this pen. It will be returned here shortly, and that wanted to thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you later.